Elective cosmetic surgeries for men are on the rise. And one such surgery that has seen an increase since 2021 is leg lengthening, which increases the patient's height. The limb lengthening surgery market is estimated to reach $7.5 million by 2028. For more, this morning, we're joined by orthopedic surgeon Anne-Marie Mediwake, who performs this surgery. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Now, we know that this surgery happens when you break your legs, and then nails are inserted to stretch the bones over the course of 3 months. And that is gradually how the height is increased. What are some of the reasons people give for wanting to get this surgery done? It sounds incredibly painful.
It's actually not that painful. I mean, elective surgery and cosmetic surgery generally, is the same idea in terms of the amount of pain. The first couple days are not fun. It's not a haircut. And then the pain gradually diminishes. And the process itself over the 3 months, typically the patients are taking Tylenol if they have some pain. So the actual lengthening process itself is not particularly painful, but the surgery itself, where we have to break your bone and put the nail in, can be painful for the first 2 or 3 days after surgery.
And what are some of the reasons that people have this surgery done?
So the main reasons people will go ahead and do this, I would say, is really about how they feel about their height. So typically, say my practice is about 90 to 95% men who feel that they really should be taller, and they have sort of an issue with being shorter. And the perception that they have of themselves and how the world sees them is fairly accurate based on literature that we have on how people are treated, particularly men, when they're shorter.
You say you've seen a 3 to 4-fold increase in this surgery in the past 4 years. When did you first start to see this surge in patients asking to have this procedure done?
So I came back to Montreal and started my practice about 10 years ago. And, I do deformity correction, limb lengthening for all kinds of medical reasons. And people started reaching out in Canada because they wanted to have the cosmetic limb lengthening done. And I sort of was resistant to doing it in the beginning. And finally, there was a family out in Vancouver who contacted me, and their son was fairly depressed about it. And they really wanted to get it done in Canada and asked me if I would consider doing it. And that's sort of how I got started. And gradually, as I've been doing it, I've noticed that the patients are very, very thankful, very grateful. It's life-altering surgery for them. It really changes their perspective on life, the way they see their future and an investment in their future. And so it's been a very gratifying experience, and so I've continued to do it. And it's gone exponential. COVID definitely helped people who wanted to have cosmetic surgery done because they were able to work from home or, not necessarily have to travel in and out of work. So that helped. But during COVID, we sort of slowed down because we didn't want to do any kind of elective cosmetic surgery at a time where there were no space in hospitals. And so following that, we sort of just had a big explosion of cases.
You mentioned an investment in their future, and it's not a cheap procedure. Having it done in Canada costs around $85,000. Who are the majority of patients who you see coming in asking for the surgery?
It's really a spectrum. First of all, obviously the patients have to have the means, but if they were going to invest in an expensive car or invest in having 3 inches more in terms of height, I think that's sort of how they see it. I have young patients where their parents will pay, so somewhere in the late teens or early 20s, and then very successful patients who have families and careers and really see this as something that would help them, in the way they feel about themselves and potentially professionally.
With any elective cosmetic procedure, there's always a psychological evaluation that's done, looking into the reasons why. You've mentioned you don't operate on people with depression and that this surgery is not meant to fix, mental health issues. So how do you make sure that a patient electing for this procedure is a good fit?
So the first consultation is actually virtual, and that's where I spend a lot of time getting to know the patients. And so when their reasoning is very coherent, they're otherwise functional human beings who have, their families and their jobs, and this is not affecting their day-to-day function. Usually they're good candidates. I do have patients who contact us who are suicidal or who are depressed, and we work with a psychologist that we put them in touch with to help them work through that process, because that's not where the surgery is really going to help them the most. They need to fix the depression and, make sure that they're mentally stable before they go through any kind of major surgery.
It is a fascinating story, and I'm glad you joined us to tell us about it. Dr. Mediwake, thanks so much.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you liked this, be sure to subscribe here, or you can check out more Your Morning videos right here.